Tonight we have a very interesting shir. It's a continuation in a certain way from last night. February 26, 2024, the 18th of Adar, 5784. You're listening to Torah with Simcha. Last night we spoke about the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisroel, the mitzvah of living in what we call nowadays Israel. And we came out that there's definitely, or there was a mitzvah, certainly in the Zman of the Beis HaMikdash, although the Rambam does not count it in one of the 613 mitzvahs, and it is a machlokas, whether it's D'oraisa, D'Rabbanan. There's an Inyan nowadays to live in Eretz Yisrael, according to some, for two reasons. Number one, because there's certain mitzvahs that can only be done on the land, on Eretz Yisrael, and one should try to keep as much of the Torah as possible. So there's parts of the Torah that can only be kept when you're there. There's no commandment to keep Shemitah, for example, if you're outside of Israel, if you're outside Eretz Yisrael. And another reason was because of Lo Sechanim, which we did not elaborate on. And we also spoke about how at Tzaddik Tamim, there's a special inyan for someone like that to be living in Eretz Yisrael. We left off with the words of the Ramban. We ended off with the words of the Ramban that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted it, that there will be people living outside Eretz Yisrael. That's why the Jewish people were exiled outside the land. And at the same time, there is an inyan to live in Eretz Yisrael. Therefore, we have groups of people, both of them are doing the Ratzon Hashem. The people living in Chutz La'aretz are doing the Ratzon Hashem. And the people living in Eretz Yisrael, they're also doing the Ratzon Hashem. Provided their Kavanas are L'Shem Shemaim, they did a Cheshbon. This is where we are. This is... So, both of them, in the words over here, Elu ve'elu tzrichim shiyeh daitem l'shem shemayim, l'kaim shlichusam shenishluchu me'ashkacha el yona. For some people, their calling is to be living outside Eretz Yisrael, and for others, it's to be living in Eretz Yisrael. That was the words of the Ramban. Now, tonight, we're going to speak about Aliyas Rabim, L'Eretz Yisrael. The masses making Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael. B'shayis Tshuvis Harashbash Kosov, he writes, Sha'af l'deus shemitzvus hayishav b'Eretz Yisrael no haggis b'zman hazeh. Even according to the opinions that say that the mitzvah, the commandment of dwelling, there is an actual commandment to live in Eretz Yisrael, that commandment is still noeg nowadays. Mikomakom, nevertheless, a mitzvah zu mitzvah koleles l'kol Yisrael. This is not a mitzvah which includes the entire Jewish people. Bibnei shalya koleles hi miklal shavuos she'ashpia kodesh baruch hu es Yisrael shlo yimaharu es haketz v'shlo ya'alu b'choma. Why can't it be? Why can't it include all the Jewish people? So he says one thing which is well known, the other thing maybe not, because there are certain oaths, there are certain shvuas that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made to Klal Yisrael, and that Klal Yisrael made to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's Shelo Yimaru Es HaKetz. The shvuas are that we will not try to quicken the end of Galus. We will not try to speed things up. V'shelo ya'alu b'choma, and that we will not go to Eretz Yisrael at force. We will not use force to take over the land of Israel. Those were the oaths that were taken. Where exactly were these oaths taken? So it's very hard to find a source, the actual source, or it's very hard to pinpoint down when or where these shvuos were taken, but the Gemara in Masechet Ksuvos Daf Kuf Yud does mention this. Some people, I believe, want to say it was some type of a metaphysical shvua. But either way, over here in the Rashba, she's adding, it seems like, Shlo Yimaharu es haketz. You will not try to quicken the end of Galus. So we know at the end of times, there's going to be a gathering of all the Jews throughout the world, and they're all going to come to Israel, to Eretz Yisroel. That's in the times of the Mashiach, the times of the Messiah. But we are not to do it on our own. And if we were to do it on our own, that's us trying to quicken the end of Galus, and that's something which, somewhere along the line, there was a shvua, there was an oath made that we're not going to do that. Now, before we continue, yeah, Dovi, what's your question? So, before we continue, I'll just mention that the current situation, meaning the past generation or two in Eretz Yisrael, it's a very unique situation that took place in the 20th century. And that's where really the land was given to the Jewish people by the United Nations. So the world as a whole, they got together and they gave it to the Jewish people. So there might have been an oath, metaphysical oath, somewhere along the line where the Talmud in Ksuvos tells us that we would not go, as a nation, we would not go to Eretz Yisrael. But that's b'choma, that's with force. But if the land is given to us, that was something that was not discussed in the Gemara, and therefore there's different approaches. There's different approaches, different perspectives on that current situation right now. With Seirah b'nei Ephraim, also says the Rashbash, go out and see what happened with the b'nei Ephraim, Makara, Lahem, Shemaru es haketz. We know that the tribe of Ephraim is one of the 12 tribes, one of the 12 Shvatim, and when Klal Yisrael were in Mitzrayim, back in Egypt, when we were slaves in Egypt, so the tribe of Ephraim tried to leave Egypt early. And those people from Ephraim that did that were destroyed. Right? What happened to them? It says Makar, what happened? Does anyone know what happened to them? Okay, they got killed by the Plishtim, the Philistines.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't we try to make that
Galus come?
Galus early?
That's a very good question. So Dovi's question is, why can't we end the Galus early? And I...
What do you do for nowadays if you want to end Galus early, then you do more mitzvahs?
Alright, so that to end it early by doing more mitzvahs, that's actually the method that we're supposed to use.
That's what we're supposed to do.
That's what we're supposed to do. Alright, so Tzivya says it's because Hashem has a specific day for Mashiach. Amna, however, mitzvah kol yachad alos ladorsham. However, says the Rashbash, there's a mitzvah on each and every individual to live there. So for the nation as a whole to go there, that's something which he writes is something that should not be done, especially if we're going to do it by force, or especially if the point is to bring the exile to an end, if that's the point. But if the land was given to us, and if we're there for our own safety, such as something like the Holocaust happened, where there seems to be a need, there needs to be a place, there clearly needs to be a place for Jewish people to go. So that really perhaps would change everything. But what we're saying here is that there is a mitzvah for each and every individual to go, but perhaps not as a nation. Or the Rashbash is saying not as a nation. Similarly, the Marsha writes, it's for sure permissible for each and every Yid to make aliyah to go to Eretz Yisrael, but we should not go together at force, the livnos lahem chomos, and we should not build walls, Yerushalayim. We should not build chomos Yerushalayim, the walls of Yerushalayim. That's the words of the Marsha. That we should not do. Emnem, however, B'shayis Tshuvis, the Avnei Nezer Kosov, he writes, Shebeshvua shlo ya'alu b'choma, ne'emar, the shvua, the oath that we are not to go at force, we said that includes afilu hayachid, that includes even an individual. Asr la'alos b'pnei hashvua. It is forbidden for him to make aliyah. It's forbidden for him to move and live in Israel because of this oath, because of the shvua. V'av shehashvua shehashpia HaKadosh Baruch Hu shlo ya'alu b'choma hi ala klal. Even though this oath, this shvua, is something which is really going on the nation as a whole, because it says we will not go with force, and that's something which is talking about the nation as a whole. V'im kain, and if so, lichayra hayechidim mutrim la'alos. If so, it would seem that individuals would be allowed to go. Nevertheless, it's impossible for there to be an obligation on a yachid to go to make aliyah, because if so, shuv yiyachiv al kol Yisrael, there would be a chiv on each and every yid, al kol yachid v'yachid b'pnei atzmo. Each and every person by themselves would have an obligation to go. And memela ya'alu kulam, and memela everyone's going to go. V'nimsa mapfirim es hashvua, and it's going to come out that the shvua was violated. The shvua that we will not take it by force, it will come out that that was violated. It's impossible to say each individual can go, just don't all go together. Guy 1 will go first, guy 2, then guy 3. It's impossible to do that. There's so many people, so many Jews, who could start regulating that? Who's going to be first? Who's going to be last? Uvachol echad ne'emar zrizin makdimin, and by everything we say, everyone will say zrizin makdimin, that we want to be zealous when it comes to mitzvahs. We want to do it first. V'nimtza sha'olin hakol b'yachad, and everyone's going to end up going all at once first. Al kain, therefore, ein chiyav al shum yachad la'alos. There is no obligation on any individual to go. Now, earlier we actually said something stronger. We said it's usher to go, even on an individual, because of the shvua. Now we're saying it's just there's no chiyav to go. So I don't know which one it is. Uvayoel Moshe, and the Yoel Moshe, he writes, Shechiluk zeh ben yachid l'rabim mevur bekama poskim. He writes that this difference between an individual and the masses is explained in many poskim. Ayin sham ba'arichos, see over there at length. That's the end of this little sugya here, but the next one is perhaps even more interesting. The title here is Keshekiblu Reshus Mehamalchias. What's the din, what's the law if the Malchias, the government, or perhaps in this case, the United Nations, gave us permission to live in the land? V'neidanu aposkim, the poskim discuss be'oifen she'amalchias nutr reshus lekol Yisrael. If a situation, or in a situation where the government, or in the 20th century, the United Nations, the world as a whole, gave permission for all of the Jewish people, la'alos Eretz Yisrael, to go up to Eretz Yisrael to live there. Is this a violation of the Shvuah? Does this violate the oath of taking the land with force? The Maharsha Kasav, in the Maharsha he writes, Shlo Yalu Yisra B'choma. Klal Yisrael is not to go up at force. Ratzal Omer, he wants to say, Vadei shirashus l'chol echad miYisrael lalos Eretz Yisrael. For sure it's permissible for each individual to make aliyah, to go to Eretz Yisrael. Al shlo yalu biyachad biyad chazaka v'livnos lehem chomos Yerushalayim. But we are not to go together at force and build the walls of Jerusalem, of Yerushalayim. When Nehemiah Sha'amar, he says, V'nivne chomas ha'ir v'lo nihiyah, Birshus ha'melech haya kamat shekasav sham. And in Nehemiah, where it discusses the case where Klal Yisrael did build walls, very, very long time ago, did build walls, that was done with permission of the king. V'af divrei ha'melech asher amar li, etc. It doesn't finish the quote. V'Tuvia sha'al Nehemiah. Tuvia asked Nehemiah, al binyan hachoma ha'al ha'melech atem oridim lo hayu yodim shebershus ha'melech haya. Tuvia asked Nehemiah, does anyone know the story? He asked him on the building of the wall. Apparently someone didn't know, we'd have to look it up, didn't know that it was with the permission of the king. Umio b'shmaitin tzarich lomar sha'achas shlo yimredu lav hainu binyan hachoyma ela b'dvarim acherim kishahim begalus. However, in our sugya, it's necessary to say she'achas shlo yimredu, that not rebelling, lav hainu binyan hachoyma, it doesn't mean we're not allowed to build a wall, ela b'dvarim acherim kisheim begalus, but it's referring to other things when we're in exile. Uvil shayis tshuvas the Avnei Nezer Kosav, he writes, shehamasig reshus la'alos ulhis yashiv be'eretz Yisrael shuv mechuyev la'alos. That if we were given permission to go to Eretz Yisrael, then we have a chiyuv, we're obligated to go. Kevin shea isser eno ela kesha'oilim biyad chazaka. The reason for this is since the isser, since the prohibition is only when we go at force together, K'moshe Perish Rashi b'choma, as Rashi explains, at force biyad chazaka, v'imhu b'rishus, and if it was done with permission, eno biyad chazaka, that's not called going with force. The nishmas kol chai, in the sefer Nishmas kol chai, Kosav he writes, she'ashvua he gam im ein b'zeh marad o milchama b'umos. He writes differently. He says that the shvua actually, we violate the shvua by going, even if when we go, we do have permission. Even if there's no rebellion when we go, and going doesn't require any war. Even if we were given permission to go, if we go, we still violate the shvua. The oath v'chein, and similarly naked by Yoel Moshe, it's mentioned in the Yoel Moshe. V'kosav, and he writes, Lidchus Rayas Avnei Nezer, he throws off the proofs of the Avnei Nezer, v'hochiach mikama mekomos, and he proves from many places, she'af aliyah b'reshus hi biyad chazaka, that even going to Eretz Yisrael with permission, that's still called yad chazaka. How do we know that? K'moshnemar, as it says in Sefer Shmos, Perek Vav, Pasuk Aleph, Ki biyad chazaki yishalchem, v'af sheparo shalacho samir tzono, uvaskam also, even though Paro sent Klal Yisrael out from his ratzon, and it was with his agreement, but even though it was with Paro's agreement, when Klal Yisrael left Egypt, it was called Yad Chazaka. We went out, we were sent out b'Yad Chazaka. We were sent out b'Yad Chazaka. How could it be we were sent out b'Yad Chazaka? We were given permission to leave Mitzrayim. You could just say, well, we were kicked out of Mitzrayim, but we were given permission to leave Mitzrayim, and it's still called Yad Chazaka. So therefore here too, even if we're given permission by the nations of the world to live there, if we go and live there, it's still called Yad Chazaka, and it would be a violation of the Shvuah. So why is it Yad Chazaka? Because any action done with strength, that's called Yad Chazaka. Even if there's no war, there's no rebellion, but you're going with strength. We're earnest. That's called Yad Chazaka. Literally mean a strong hand. Lizos. Because of Rashi writes Shlo Yalu Yachad B'Yad Chazaka. Rashi writes we should not go together with force. V'hainu Shlo Yalu Aliyah Af Olim Aliyah Meruba B'Yachad B'Yischazchus Yisera. Rashi says that we should not, a lot of us should not go together with extra force. But it's mashma from Rashi, as individuals we could go. Furthermore, he's mochiach there, he proves there, that the shvuah is talking also when there is permission from the malchus, we still would not be able to go. And even if the majority of Klal Yisrael is not going. Midivrei HaGemara biyuma. We prove this from the words of the Gemara in Yuma, Daf Tes Amid Beis, Darish Reish Lakish Darshans, Im Chaymahi. A pasuk from Shir Hashirim, Perches pasuk Tes. Im Asisem Atzmichem, those words mean, if you make yourself, Kechayma, like a wall, Ve'alesem Kulcham Bimei Ezra. If you make yourself like a wall, and you go up, all of you, in the days of Ezra, V'chulu Harei Shekara La'aliyah Meirova B'Lashon Choma. We see that going up, Meruba, a lot of people going up, we use the Lashon, the language of Choma, of a wall. So, Av Shahaya HaKol B'Rishus, even though in Ezra, it was all done with permission. V'chein Hevi, similarly we bring Shemavur B'Ramban. It's explained in the Ramban, Sha'af She'aliyas Ezra Haisab Rishus Koresh. Even in Ezra, the Aliyah was done with permission of Koresh, Lo Alu Imo, Kol Hashvatim. Not all of the Shvatim went with him. Because they didn't want to bring an end to Galus early, because we're not supposed to do that. We're not supposed to do that in a physical way. We're not supposed to arrange the physical setup of, start appointing a king, doing all that. We could do it in a spiritual way. We can do more mitzvos and...
Are you allowed to purposely keep more mitzvos?
Yeah, for sure. So we see explicitly, even though then there was permission of the malchus of the government, and there was a tafkid from Shemayim to go up to Eretz Yisrael, v'libnos es Beis HaMikdash, and to build the Beis HaMikdash. This is what was supposed to happen. Ukvar hayezman haketz, and it already was the end of the Galus. This was before the Bayis Sheni. Mikamakom, nevertheless, lo ratu shar shvatim la'alot v'lidchok es haketz. The rest of the shvatim did not want to go and to push the end. Yain Shalo Aleihem Nemra Hapkida Ela Galus Bavel. And this is referring to the Galus of Bavel when we were exiled to Iraq or Bavel for 70 years. It's when the Purim story happened. So when we came back to Eretz Yisrael, not all the Shvatim came. Furthermore, it's explained in the words of the Ramban. This is a Ramban unbelievable Ramban in the Perek Chav Chesem Sefer Dvarim Pasuk Mem Beis. There's a promise from Hashem that Klal Yisrael will not be destroyed, and that will be fulfilled only while we are in Galus, while we are exiled. The lo be Eretz Yisrael. Promise will be fulfilled only while we're exiled, but there was no promise made for Eretz Yisrael. And it sounds like such a chiddush that it sounds like too big of a shocker for me to be reading that right, but I believe that's what it's saying. V'zel Lashono. This is his actual language. Yeshivasenu begalus hi avtacha. The promise is when we live in exile, Sha'amar Lano, that Hashem says to us, V'af gam zos p'hiyosam be'eretz oivehem. Even though you're living in the land of your enemies, lo ma'astim v'lo ga'altim liklosam lahafir brisi itam. I will not let them destroy you. So we'd have to look at the actual Ramban. Who's adding in the words v'lo be'eretz Yisrael? When he quotes the Ramban, when he actually quotes the Ramban, he doesn't bring those words, v'lo be'eretz Yisrael. It says there was a promise from what is being quoted here. The promise is while we are in Galus. We could be in Galus while we're in Eretz too. Yisod said this Yisod, Shalili Eretz Yisrael, Apershus, that he, Biklal Shvua, going up to Eretz Yisrael with permission is in the category of the Shvua. Mavur, it's explained, Gamba Sefer Yafa Kol, Mibal HaYafa, Itoar. Shekosov that he writes, Efshar Shashvua Shlo Ya'ala B'choma, He Afila B'Shus HaMalchus. It's possible that the Shvua that not to go up at force is even with the permission of the Malchus. Kevan Sha'ashem, Pazreinu, B'Kanfos Arts, since the Kodesh Baruch Hu scattered us to the corners of the land, Ein Lanu Rishus, we do not have permission, lihiskabitz, to gather ourselves, lihiyos, and kechoimon, to go like a wall, la'alos, to go up yachad, together, li Eretz Yisrael, to the land of Israel, ad shek yikbetzu Hashem al yedei Mashiach, until HaKadosh Baruch Hu gathers us through Mashiach, through the Messiah. V'yochiach kain mimashneah marsham, and we prove there from what is said there, im chayma hi, im alu Yisrael b'chayma min hagalas, if Klal Yisrael goes up like a wall from the exile, v'av shesham lo alu b'yad ramah, even though there was not done, b'yad ramah. V'avas Yehona's son, Rav Eibchitz Perish, Masha Amr Shalei B'chama. This we say do not go up at like a wall at force. Shahainu Af Im Yesh Rishus. This means even if there's permission. Mikol Ha'amim, from all of the nations. La'alus Eretz Yisrael, to go to Eretz Yisrael. V'zel Lashono. This is the Lashon of Aknesses Yisrael Tzeicha Be'ela Uvishvo. Im Ta'iru V'im Ta'oru Es Ha'ava Neged Kibbutz Yisrael V'im Shakol Noadu Leilech Yechidav Yerushalayim V'chol Ha'umos Maskimim Afilu Hachi. Even if all the nations agree, even so, Tzeicha Shechalila Shetelech Shema. God forbid we should go there. Hiaketz Sasum, because the end of our exile is hidden from us. We don't know when it will be. V'ulai, and perhaps Ein Ata Hazman Ha'amiti. Perhaps this is not the real time. Rak Es Ratzon Lefi Shah. Only it's an Eis Ratzon, a temporary Eis Ratzon perhaps. V'hayom o machar, and maybe today or tomorrow, yichtu, we will sin, u'muchrachim legalos pam shniya chas v'shalom. And we will be forced to be exiled a second time, chas v'shalom, from Eretz Yisrael. This is the reason why. So Dovi, you had your question, and now we have the answer. Why can't we go to Eretz Yisrael to end the exile early? Because it has to be done at the time that it's decreed in Shemayim that exile has to end. Why? Because if we do it early, okay, maybe Tzivi said that. If we do it early, what happens if we end up sinning afterwards? So if we actually are tzaddikim, then it would come out that it's fine. Fine, so go there. But the concern is, Klal Yisrael, many times, we end up, as a nation, doing chatayim. And if we do chatayim, we end up getting thrown out. The achron kasha min harishon. And the second time being thrown out will be even harder than the first time. Ulachach bakasha, therefore there is a request. Shlo yelchul ad shechavitz. Do not go until it is desired from Shemayim. Ad kan lashono. Over Yoel Moshe Kasav, he writes Shebedivrei Harashpash Mevor, he explains Gamkin She'aliyah B'choma, also going up B'choma after Shus, even with permission, is Aser. Shrei Kasav Harashpash She'inzu Mitzvah Kolelas Chol Yisrael Machmas HaShavua. Since this is not a mitzvah which all of Klal Yisrael can do, we can't do it because it's the Shvua, the Imbershus, and if it's done with permission, it's Mutter Adayin Yachol Lihiyos Mutter L'chol Yisrael. If it would be done, if it would be permissible, if there's reshus, then all of Klal Yisrael would go. K'mo liyichidim im hi reshus v'chein uchiach sham divrei haribash. Yisera mizos, more than this, Kasav Ma'aral from Prague. Sha'af imo umos koifim es Yisrael. Even if the nations of the world force all the Jews to go to Eretz Yisrael, lo ya'avru al hashvua. This is the biggest chiddush tonight. We should not transgress the shvuah, even if we're all forced to go. We're kicked out of every country. They say everyone go to Eretz Yisrael. You have to go. We should not violate the shvuah. I don't know what we should do then. Vafilu im yirtzu lahamisam. Even if they say they will kill us, either go to Eretz Yisrael or you will die. Bi'inuyim kashim, or difficult afflictions. Im lo yalu, if you don't go, you still can't go. Okay, he says this comes from the Maharal from Prague.
Say, if it's B'koach Nefesh, you have to...
Right, this is like...
For 1 second, come out and you're done.
Right, how could this is like got to be a misprint? How could this possibly be? Right, b'kuach nefesh. We're always told the only time we give our lives over for something is if it's for avodah zarah, shvichas tamim, or gilei arayos. Otherwise, the Torah says v'chai behem, you have to live. Kasav ha'ma'aral mi Prague. Now, the Maharal is famous for the goylam that he made. And there's even books about it. But these words apparently come from the Maharal, that even if the nations force Klal Yisrael to go to Eretz Yisrael, lo ya'avru ala shvua, we should not transgress the shvua, even if they want lahamisam, that's death, and not just death, but to kill with difficult afflictions. Im lo yalu, if we do not go, you should not transgress the shvuah. Now, I don't understand how this could be said, but that's what the Maharal from Prague says. Okay, next paragraph. With a Sefer Pri Tzadik, Kasavi writes, Sheish Shvuos, there are 6 oaths. Sheish Shvuos alone, these 6 Shvuos, Lama, the Chulu, etc. Okay, the Shalo Yidchuku Esaketz. We should not bring the end of exile early. Perish Rashi explains, Shlo Yirbu B'Tachnunim Al Kach Yoser Midai. Shlo Yirb. This is also a. What does that mean? It means we should not increase our supplications, our tefillah, too much. We're going even a step further. We shouldn't daven too hard for the end of Galus. That's what he says. Because davening also causes something to happen. So, to Dovi's question, mitzvahs so far, we've seen that, yeah, you could, let's say for now, do mitzvahs to bring the geula. We haven't ruled out doing mitzvahs yet. But we have ruled out excessive tefillah. We daven for the geula, but according to the Pri Tzedek, we should not daven, there should not be too many.
A nice text. I didn't really ask the question, but I phrased.
You bavorn the shiloh. That's what people say. Like, what's Rashi bavorns the following Shiloh. He never asked the Shiloh, but you could tell that was the... Yeah, okay, so what's the Shiloh you bavorned?
Before I said that if you said that if it's Koach Nefesh, then you should actually go there. So I would say, okay, that makes sense. So so then you could do enough mitzvahs that it could come, and then you could go for just...
Yeah, but we don't know how many mitzvos need to be done. What I envision is something similar to Moshe Rabbeinu. We're told he davened 515 times to be allowed to go to Eretz Yisroel, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to stop davening. So we do find something like this. So it could be it's something similar. Like Hashem allowed Moshe to daven, to go to Eretz Yisrael, and in a certain way Hashem even listened to his tefillah. He got to see Eretz Yisrael. But at a certain point, Hashem said, stop. So you're asking a good Shiloh, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu have to ask Moshe to stop davening, let him daven, and just Hashem will say no. That's why we see from there the tremendous koyach hatfilah, the tremendous power that tefillah has, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu mamish made it that tefillah is a mitzias. If you daven, if Hashem put it a mitzias into the world, this is how it works. You daven for something, it will happen. You cause it to happen. So it must be Hashem. I don't. You can't say he can't say no because Hashem could do anything. So I don't. But this is how it works. You daven, and it brings it about. So at a certain point, it brings it about. I mean, Hashem asked Moshe to stop davening. But yeah, I mean, Hashem, I hear your shilas. Hashem could just say no. Okay. Oh, and here he says, V'hainu sheyesh shahaya koyach biyadim laharbos b'tfilah. This means that there is within the koyach the power to increase tefillah, v'hayu polim b'tfilasam l'karev esaketz, and to cause through the action of tefillah, it will bring the end of the exile sooner. And on this is where the shvua was, shlo yidchaku esaketz. We should not bring the end closer. V'lachein, therefore, Amar Kodesh Baruch Hu Moshe Rabbeinu. Imam says, he says the case. And therefore, Kodesh Baruch Hu said, the Moshe Rabbeinu shlo yaftzir midai betfila le'achdas Eretz Yisrael. Don't daven too much, shlo yaftzir midai, in tefillah to enter Eretz Yisrael. Came in shiratzon Hashem Yisparach hayesh yishar Moshe Rabbeinu ava shalom b'chutz la'aretz, because it was the ratzon Hashem for Moshe Rabbeinu to stay outside Eretz Yisrael. Ukein zeh kasvu gam hayismach Moshe ve'achsam sofer. And the Yoel Moshe Labar Divrei Rashi, in a similar approach they take to explain the words of Rashi. Shekasav, that he writes al Shvo Shlo Yidchaku Esaketz. They should not bring the end closer. Shlo Lahaftzir B'Tfilo Yotzer Midai. We should not daven too much. V'Kasha. This is difficult. Maha Gevul B'Zeh. What's the boundary? I mean, if once you say you should daven, you're supposed to daven, but not too much. Ma gvul, what's the gvul in this? Ma nikra kara'ui, what's called the proper amount of tefillah? Ma nikra yoser midai, what's called too much? Elo habir, but rather the explanation is, shafilu b'nei aliyah, lo yif'alu lahavi esaga'ula al yedei shvua, v'hosev achsam sover shlo lasos kamo she'asar Rav Yosef. We should not do like what Rav Yosef did l'rina al yedei shvua. I don't know what that case was. About tefillah ba'alma mutar akol. But he says just general tefillah is permissible always. The ayin b'Yoel Moshe sha'arach b'dvareim. And see in the Yoel Moshe where he has an arichas in these words. We have 4 paragraphs left. What if we do one minute a paragraph? Okay, 4 minutes. Of a preach tzaddik, we may not translate all the words here. A preach tzaddik also v'yatzom v'chein hamchuvim b'shvua shlo yalu Yisroel b'choima. Similarly, one has kavanah in the shvua that Klal Yisrael should not go up at force. V'shlo yimradu b'umos ha'olam, should not rebel. And umos ha'olam shlich oira. Lama tzarich shvua al zeh. Why do we need a shvua on this? Kevin shlo yeh hazman, since it's not the time v'haratzon, and it's not Hashem Yisparach's ratzon. B'vadei lo yeh b'kuchem lasos b'uma. we're for sure not going to be able to do it. What does that mean? It's a very good point here. What does that mean? We can't do it. Of course we can't do it. Hashem, it's not the Ratzon Hashem for the Galus to end. It's not even possible for us to do it. So what is this Shvuah all about? We're not lo yihya b'koichem. It's not within our ability to do anything if a Kodesh Baruch Hu doesn't want the Mashiach to be here. As we find, as it says, Al ta'alu ki ein Hashem b'kirbechem v'lo tzanagvu. What does it mean not to go up b'choma? I know av sheyala al daitam shehem ruyim legeula. That means even if you're going to go up with the das, that it's fit, that we are fit for the Geula, K'moshe Amro, as we say, Mesach L'Pesachim, Ani Choyma Zu Torah, V'chein Nidrash Im Choyma Hu Ze Avraham, Im Ma'amid Hu Dvarim Kechoyma Ani Choma, V'amid Maisim Tovim Kechoyma, V'zeh Shlo Yalu B'choma, Shlo Yirtzu Davko La'alos B'koyach HaChoma, Afilu K'sheyaro Shehem Ruyim, even if we see that we are fit, V'yesh Lahem Torah, we have Torah, O Maisim Tovim, and we have good deeds, Kechoyma, like a wall, like a al zeh haisa hashvua shlo ya'alu b'choma, we still should not go up. V'shelo yimredu b'umos ha'olam, and not rebel on the nations of the world. Hainu gam ken k'sheyiro shekvar gadla rishis hagoyim. This is also, even when we see that there already has been great evil amongst the nations, ad shiruyim lihigal al yidei zeh, to the point where we are for sure fit to be redeemed because of the evil that was done against us. So we're saying that there's two different ways we could be redeemed, either because we are keeping the Torah and doing the mitzvahs, or we are treated so badly. Either way, al zeh ba hashvua, in both scenarios, the shvua comes and tells us, shekevin she'aketz lo nigla, since the end of the exile, what has not been revealed to us, v'chol zman shlo Allah b'rtzono, and any time we're not going up with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's will, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ratzon, ein itana yodea imruyim legeula mitzidam, we don't know if we really are fit for the geula. Uvemeshech chachma kasav, he writes in the pasuk, pakod yifkod, eschem de Allah eschem, hine limdem kilo ya'alu b'choma, od bo navi me Hashem yisparach. There'll come a time when there'll be a prophet, a navi from Hashem, v'yomer, and he will say, pakad, v'zel limud l'doros. That's what happened back then in the Galus Mitzrayim, and that is going to happen in the future as well. V'zel limud l'doros shlo ya'alu me'atzman. That's telling us in the future we should not go by ourselves. V'lo k'moshe asu b'nei Ephraim. We should not do like what the b'nei Ephraim did. Shehagdimu haketz. They tried to bring the end early. V'nei b'akdamas Rav Chaim Vital, the Sefer Eitz Chaim, Kasav, he writes in the pasuk, Ishpati eschem banos Yerushalayim. Perish hadvarim ki hinei haisa ashvua hagedoylo elokim shelo yo'oreru es hageula. There was a shvua that we will not arouse the geula ad she'osa ahava tihiyeh b'chefetz v'ratzon tov, until the love, there will be the love with his desire and a good will. Kamashikosav achet chefetz keben ha'oved es aviv, like a son that serves his father. V'ayim b'chol platrin delay, v'chol genizin delay. V'lo ka'eved ha'oved b'mishna, v'lo ka'chashivcha al menas l'kabel pras. Ukvar amru Chazal, kizman ha'shvua hi ad elef shanim. Chazal have said that the time of the shvua is for 1,000 years, like it's written in the Brisa of Rabbi Yishmael in Pirkei Heichos. This is the final paragraph. So there are those that want to learn midvar from his words. There are those that want to learn from his words. Some say this shvuah was only chal for 1,000 years. We see that from the Rav Chaim Vital in the Sefer Eitz Chaim. With Divrei Yoel, in the Divrei Yoel, he has an arichas leochiach to prove shepashut hu she'azhara hamvu'eres b'toira u'v'gemara ein lo gvul zman. He proves that it's pashut, that the warning mentioned in the Torah and in the Gemara actually has no end. V'lo kasav, and he does not write from ruach. I'm not sure what that Rashi Teva stands for. Ela al HaKadosh Baruch Hu nishpa shlo toyel teshuva the Elef Hashanim Harishonos Shel HaGalus. Wait, and he explains that the words written that the Shvuah is only for 1,000 years, that means that a Kodesh Baruch Hu made a Shvuah, that your tshuva will not help during the first 1,000 years of Galus. Even if you do tshuva, the Galus will continue for at least 1,000 years. We know now that we're already well into 2,000 years of our Galus. But v'ayin od b'sefer Yafet Talmud, Shabir, where he explains, Sha'af umos ha'olam, ein mekayamim es hashvuos. He explains, even if the umos ha'olam did not fulfill their shvuah, sheshpiosam, mikomakom, nevertheless, Yisrael tzrichim lekayim es mashe es shviyam HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Klal Yisrael still needs to be mekayim the shvuah that Klal Yisrael made to Hashem, like it said, Im atem mekayam es hashvuah mutav. If you're mekayim the shvuah, then it's good. V'im lav, and if not, then he doesn't write the end. So those final words there is brings to light an approach that is also used on the Gemara Ksuvis, where we say Rabbi Yisachar Fran brings this in one of his shiurim. There's an approach to say that the shvuah is only chal. It was like a bargain. The umos ha'olam also, there's a shvuah not to oppress Klal Yisrael too much. And the saying is, after the Holocaust, we say, if you didn't keep your part of the deal, then we don't keep our part of the deal. That's one approach. Over here, he's saying not to do that one wrong doesn't make the second one right.